Morning, Amanda. Hey.
Hello.
Hello. Amanda, for those people that don't know you, you're a naturopath.
Yep.
And you have a clinic in Sydney.
Yep.
And just before we pause for a moment, can you just tell us, what is a naturopath? What does a naturopath do?
Okay, so a naturopath, we basically our aim is to take a very holistic approach to somebody's health. However, we definitely combine, or in my practice, I definitely combine very kind of, conventional and modern medicines tools for diagnosis.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll do blood tests and send people off for screening for whatever we think is appropriate to build, that particular picture behind a person's health. And however, our treatment options are obviously more naturopathic, that we'll use nutritional medicine or herbal medicine, or in my clinic I also collaborate with an acupuncturist and a psychologist.
Yes.
So that we feel like we're providing a very kind of comprehensive approach to a person's care.
Great, fabulous. Good, thank you, Amanda. And Amanda, you particularly focus on women's health in your clinic, and in particular, tell me, is there anything that you are particularly passionate about, or most interested in at the moment, in connection with women's health?
Wow, look, I'm like a dinosaur. I've been in practice for about 22 years, and my specialty has always been women's health. I get out of bed for women every single day, and I love my work, and I really do love working with women. My practice has definitely been around fertility. About 70 to 80% of my practice is fertility, and I suppose women's reproductive health, really from teenagers, all the way through to menopause, really. And I love working with both ends of those spectrum. I love working with teenage women as well. I really do. But at the moment, and look, fertility is always, very much the undercurrent and the bulk of my practice, but there's huge crossovers with fertility and autoimmunity at the moment. And it is, and even in the 22 years that I've been working, it's of interest and concern to me, the prevalence of autoimmunity in women's health. And the statistics are frightening. It's about 1 in 4 women have an autoimmune disease. We all know women with autoimmune disease, and I do find that a real concern. So it's a real particular area of interest for me at the moment, and I think we have to acknowledge that and work out why it is impacting so profoundly on so many women's health. And there is a big crossover with fertility, so there's often conditions like psoriasis or thyroid disease. Endometriosis is now considered an autoimmune disease with a lot of my fertility patients. So I'm really interested in peeling back the layers of what's behind this kind of bubbling inferno of kind of autoimmunity that's affecting women at the moment.
Can you kind of define what autoimmunity is? I know you've talked about endometriosis and thyroid issues, but how would you define autoimmunity? Have you got a kind of
Well, for me, and look, and there's quite a few hypotheses going on around autoimmunity, so there isn't a really distinct definition, but a lot of the working hypotheses that are out there with regards to it, it's when one's immune system is starting to be inappropriate to your own tissues. So, and that's why autoimmune disease actually affects every organ of the body. There is not an organ or a cell that cannot be impacted by autoimmunity. And the interesting thing is whether a woman has autoimmune disease in the gut, like something like Crohn's disease, or in her pelvic area like endometriosis, or in her joints like rheumatoid arthritis. The very interesting thing is a lot of the background mechanisms are the same.
Right.
And even what we find in their blood tests and the antibodies they're often the same.
Yeah.
But the actual disease process is taking up residence in a particular organ.
Yeah.
But the mechanisms can really be the same. And so that, our immune system, we have a cellular immune system which is directly attacking cells or viruses or pathogens that we're exposed to, and that's really important, so that when we are affected by a virus or a fungi or a bacteria, that our immune system will fight that. But then there's another arm of the immune system that's called the humoral arm of the immune system, and that is what should produce antibodies like if we're exposed to glandular fever,
Right.
we should produce antibodies so that we don't get that disease
Right.
again. However, with autoimmunity, what is actually happening is we're producing antibodies against our own tissue.
Yes.
Our immune system has got it wrong.
Yes.
So with a condition like Hashimoto's, for example, which is autoimmune disease of the thyroid, the body is producing antibodies against the thyroid tissue. The immune system and our bodies are at war together. And I'm really interested about why it is just, I mean, it's an epidemic, Emma.
Yeah.
It's an absolute epidemic.
Yes.
And so that I'm interested in, and I'm also really passionate about, and why is this affecting women? You know, we
Yes.
need to unpack that.
Yeah.
And I feel it's an area for all of us who work in nutritional or complementary medicine can actually make
Yes.
a real difference with our patients. you know.
Yes, absolutely,
really can.
absolutely.
Mm.
And recently you attended a conference about women's health.
Yeah.
Is there anything you can share from that conference you'd like to share with us? Anything that really resonated with you? Any new findings or anything?
Yeah, well, that was a fertility conference. That was actually not a complementary fertility conference. That was very much modern medicine, IVF, and lots of researchers were actually presenting at that conference in Adelaide. That was the Fertility Society of Australia conference. And what I was really heartened by was a lot of the research they're presenting is things that we know intuitively in clinic, but you know, aren't able to do the research on. So they were looking at the role of inflammatory mechanisms, which was really interesting.
Okay.
Looking at the role of specific nutrients and its impact on IVF and fertility outcomes. There was a nice level of argy-bargy that was going through a couple of researchers and their the different ways that they kind of approach autoimmunity
interesting.
With their women who keep miscarrying or are having implantation failure with IVF.
Yes.
And that was really interesting because a lot of the stuff that they were discussing and they were researching is looking at what can impact on those specific immune cells that are unfortunately, you know, acting this really aberrant fashion. And a lot of those nutrients were antioxidants. And looking at diets that can relate, you know, lots of information on things like the Mediterranean diet, how that can kind of impact on women's health and fertility. So it was a nice kind of meeting of you know, what we have intuition about in clinic and actually being represented in the research.
Yes.
So,
great.
Yeah, it was
It's
very
great.
heartening. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
It was
Heartening
a
is the good word.
It was a
Absolutely.
great conference, and then I think, and that, you know, everybody comes to the same conclusion, is that we need more research, you know, and that our aim is that, you know, whether our patients are seeking modern medicine or going through IVF, it's about, we need to do everything we can to actually not be in conflict with that process, to be able to kind of complement that process.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, I have so much respect for modern medicine, and I have so much respect for I think IVF is extraordinary medicine. I really do. And so my job a lot of the time is supporting my women to have the best possible outcomes with whatever other you know, treatment plans they might be pursuing.
Fantastic. Amanda, I wondered if you'd mind sharing with us just a couple of perhaps some stories you could share with us of some women you might have encountered in your work that just we might find interesting. Could you share something with us?
Yeah, well, all my women are interesting. Women are just interesting. We are, aren't we? Women are just interesting, you know, and look, you know, and this would be your experience too, that often their health kind of comes at the back end of their children and their partner and trying to kind of, you know, manage this. So, you know, a lot of, you know, my work with women, I think it's important that I feel like I like to be a port of call for them where they can just kind of unpack all of these things. And obviously, you know, being a naturopath, you know, we try and have a very holistic approach. So we're looking at their stress and their lifestyle, and their sleep. But, you know, for a lot of my patients, I feel that they are just happy that someone is working out what's going on with them.
That's
and
interesting,
a lot of my patients are those, they arrive at my door because they've fallen through the cracks with conventional medicine or anything else they've been exploring. And I feel my role is that as naturopaths, and the same for you, Emma, as a nutritionist, you're not looking for one big problem. You're like, okay, where are the spot fires here? What do we need to attend to? What are the multitude of factors that could be kind of causing this woman to be suffering the symptoms that she's suffering? And that's why we take a very a functional approach to that, and make sure that we're looking at anything that potentially could be kind of contributing.
Yes.
And so I mean, there was even a woman who just saw me on Saturday, and she was that classic woman who, I mean, she's actually trying to conceive, and she has lots of symptoms and feels exhausted, and her gut's a mess and all the rest of it. But she kept just being told by modern medicine that there was actually nothing wrong with her. And so we dug a bit deeper, and we did some further testing with her, and she's definitely got an autoimmune condition. She's definitely got issues with her adrenal hormone. She's definitely got issues with the way her body is metabolizing hormones. So for her, and even though she ended up in tears in my room, but for her it was a real relief that actually somebody's acknowledging, no, these things will affect your health, and that we need to take a very kind of comprehensive approach, and that we can dampen this kind of autoimmune fire that's kind of threatening at the moment. And the body wants to heal, and it's important that we just help direct women in the direction of the way that their body actually does want to heal. It has incredible inherent mechanisms to heal, and I feel my job is just to help navigate that with a woman so that she gets back on her healing path,
and
back in that
direction.
And it's similar to a lot of women who are kind of diagnosed as a diabetic, and they're just told that that's insulin's their life now, and that's what they have to do, and that there isn't anything else that they could actually do to kind of turn that insulin resistant or diabetic boat around.
Do you have an example of that?
I have that with a patient of mine who comes to mind, who's just a beautiful woman in her 50s, and again, she had a mother who was a diabetic, and there was diabetes anywhere in her family, and she just thought that was her eventuality. But we know that type 2 diabetes, another autoimmune condition, Emma, is so affected by our diet and lifestyle and our sleep, and our habits around relaxation and exercise. And she was because again, the same, often I have these women and they arrive and they'll just announce, I am a diabetic. And I'm like, you're more than that, actually. You're the woman who happens to have that diagnosis. And so I feel my role is just to unpack that and give them the opportunities to see, well, can we reduce that insulin resistance? And yes, you are susceptible to diabetes because you have that background genetics there, but we can also make a huge impact with your diet and lifestyle and exercise, and definitely some appropriate nutritional supplementation if that's needed. And this particular woman I'm talking about, she was just absolutely convinced that her rest of her life was going to be dependent on insulin, and we were able to get her off that. And her doctor was very supportive, and he was very, whatever your naturopath's doing, it's working, keep that up, and often, and that's why, our job is to kind of work alongside these specialists too, and they don't have the time that we might have to, or the expertise in that area of trying to kind of give women guidance around their, their diet and their nutrition. So, and she's really turned her life around. She's no longer insulin dependent. We definitely are monitoring her blood sugar levels, and but she's been very, very committed to taking quite a dramatic,
look at her life and change.
And really kind of try to do it differently in this second half of her life. And that's what, I'm always kind of, trying to counsel women around, that we can do it different.
What a great note to finish on, Amanda. Fabulous, thank you so much.
Pleasure.
And thank you for sharing with us today.
It was a pleasure. It was a pleasure.